All right, let's jump into the session here, folks. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. We really appreciate it. We know you are all busy, as we all are, and the fact that you are giving an hour of your day right in the middle of it is not lost on us. So we will do our absolute best to provide you value with this hour, give you some stuff to take back to your business that you can do really quickly and see some impact with. While we're getting started here, I want to do a little bit of a warm up. So in the chat, I'd just love you to put what's your word and number for today or right now. And by word, I mean how you're feeling, and number, what's your energy level? 10 being I am bouncing and buzzing out of my chair. 0, feeling pretty tired today. Haven't got a lot. And all right, we're seeing the 10s jumping in right away. I love that. And look, no pressure to share, but if you do feel it, then please go. There was a 14. Wow. That's a lot of energy.
That's my kind of person, Reese.
Yeah. You can send some of that my way. I would really appreciate that, 14. I didn't catch your name. I'm just going to call you by your number for now.
It's going so fast.
Yeah. It's just
I like
cracking.
Jeffrey. He said solid Texan and a 7.
Nice. Inquisitive. That's a good one. I like that word. It's optimistic, frustrated, Frida. All right. We are getting the full gamut here. Appreciate you for sharing openly. Sometimes it feels good. Sometimes you need it. Sometimes you don't. Someone's tired, I think. Yeah, a couple are tired. That is part of the course. We run a lot of leadership development sessions. We do this at the beginning of all of our sessions, and we get a lot of 6%, 7s, and tides at the moment. Distracted. We are a tired and distracted people. The human race, I guess. I don't know. Am I going too big there? Let's move forward. Someone save me from this. So today's session, our mission is to, and we've done a few of these partnered with Bucket List now, and our mission is always the same, to support people and culture leaders to build great cultures for their people. And we do our damnedest to make sure that we do that every time. And the topic today is how to put culture at the core of your 2022 strategy. We're going to share some of the trends that we're seeing as a group, and we expect to continue into 2022. We'll talk a little bit about, how do you develop that strategy? How do you tackle a meaningful problem in your culture strategy? And then we're going to talk about execution. So action-packed agenda, tons of stuff. We'll have a slide deck to support. You can see the opening slide in front of you, and you can see it's presented by us as well. And so we're gonna run through that agenda. I want you to use the chat to throw out questions. As best I can, I'm gonna integrate those questions into the Q&A. It's a round table style Q&A supported with some slides here, but really want you to get involved. Please, if we don't get to your question, try not to be offended. Don't take it personally. I probably wouldn't have seen it if I don't get to it, but I will do my absolute best to bring the questions in and have this feel as interactive as we possibly can. So without further conversation, let me introduce our panelists. Jason Lindstrom is the founder and CEO of Bucket List Rewards. He is a serial entrepreneur, outstanding entrepreneur, and he's also a rewards and recognition expert. We are really lucky to have him on the call today, and in my opinion, he is an all-around great guy. We also have Christy Pennock. She's joining from O2E Brands. She is the Director of Culture and Experience. Such a great title and well-deserved. I've known Christy for a few years now, and she is one of the kindest people I know. Just an absolute rock-solid human being, and doing some fantastic things. She has a depth of experience in people and culture, as well as recruitment, which we know is part of everybody's culture strategy today. So we think she's the perfect person to be talking about this right now. Finally, we've got Jerry Grattan, last but not least. He is the Chief People Officer at Trailblaze Partners. He and I work together every day. He's twice recognized as a Canadian HR Leader of the Year and has worked with some fantastic Canadian brands, including MEC, Aritzia, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and the list goes on. He also happens to be the dad of the best looking dog in Vancouver, Izzy. She is totally awesome. So yeah, she's hanging out right beside Jerry. She always is. You just can't see her. She might bark. My dog Boris might bark too. Please forgive us. We're in our homes here. So I am Reese Green. I'm your host today. I am CEO and co-founder of Trailblaze Partners. And I also am a mediocre but passionate snowboarder, which means living in Vancouver is perfect for me, where there are plenty of bunny hills and lots of patience for tourists. So let's jump into the agenda. We're going to kick this conversation off talking about what should people like you, people and culture pros, be prepared for in 2022. So we're going to go around the table. I'm going to ask some specific questions, but Christy, Jerry, Jason, feel free to take it where you want to go. And Christy, I'm going to throw the first one to you. You've got a great background in recruitment and you're doing some fantastic stuff right now. Great resignation, tight labor market. Where do you see this going in 2022? Is it going to get better, worse, the same? What are you thinking?
Yeah, Reese, I'll first say that the struggle is real. We're all feeling it. I think every single organization is feeling the crunch on talent right now, and I don't think it's going anywhere in 2022. I think even it might get a little bit worse before it gets better. But I actually really hate the line, the great resignation. I think that we can pivot that to the great hire, and you have control over how you do that. So if people are resigning, it's because they're going somewhere. So pivot it and make your organization the place that they want to come to. And I think that that is all about culture. And as people and culture leaders, we have full control over that. And so that's what we're doing at O2E is every single day we're thinking about how do we attract amazing people, retain the amazing people that we have. Some of our people are on this call today. And like that is how we pivot the great resignation to the great hire. And we have to do that as things get crunchy in 2022.
Yeah, I love that flipping it. Brings to mind one man's trash is another man's treasure. No pun intended for your 1-800-GOT-JUNK brand there, but yeah, it's such a great perspective. Jerry, we've got to keep moving forward here, but let's talk a little bit about people and culture in general. 2020, 2021 really put people and culture at the forefront of the C-suite, particularly CEOs we've noticed are talking more about it, thinking more about it, and doing it in a different way. There's Izzy. Hi, Izzy. Doing it in a different way than ever before. Similar question to what I asked Chrissy. What are you thinking is going to happen with that in 2022?
Yeah, and I think that we saw so many people and culture leaders find themselves, the BFF of the CEO right around the time when the pandemic hit. We have to figure out how to take our workforce remote. We have to, I know Christy was busy trying to take a 300-person call center to entirely remote. So there were so many challenges, and not just the pandemic, but over the last 18 months, we've seen so many challenges that have put people and culture at the core of strategy. And I see that trend continuing because like Christy was just talking about with what I like to call the great migration, like the great hire, the great people are going somewhere, and culture needs to continue to be at the core of the strategy, but it's also up to people and culture pros, HR pros, to remain at the core. And I think, we do that by making the case in business terms for why culture is so critical to our organizations, why it deserves, to be front and center in the strategy, right along with our customer acquisition strategies and our retention strategies and all of that. So, I think, culture is here to stay. It's the differentiator. Eyes are wide open in the labor market and just in what people expect from employers. And it's ours to lose. So we got to stay at the center. And I think I see that continuing.
It's great. Thanks, Jerry. Really appreciate that.
Thanks,
perspective. So, Jason, let's give you a shot here, mate. Hybrid work, kind of a new term. It was 6 months ago to most of us, but not so new anymore. What do you think that's going to look like in 2022?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of organizations are now comfortable with a hybrid environment. However, it's people are still struggling and keen to find a good solution to build a deeply connected culture. And to kind of echo Jerry and Christy's point, but from a slightly different perspective, we work with a huge variety of organizations, and a lot of times they'll come to us right after they run their employee engagement surveys, and they'll share those results with us. And a theme I'm seeing is, number one, culture is never more important than now. Number two, there's a deep desire for community and connection amongst staff and amongst teams, and it's felt right up to the CEO level. So CEOs have a team that might be hybrid, might be remote, and they're like, how do I? We had a great culture before. How do we maintain that, or how do we build a great culture in these unusual times? And so tactically, what I see some of the best organizations doing is creating what we call micro moments, which is where you allow staff to connect in a meaningful way. It can be short, it can be punchy, but you want to do it on a regular basis. And to switch to highly tactical, because that's what I love to do. I love trying to give tactics, especially in a session like today. What I've seen a number of organizations doing are things like daily scrums, daily huddles, where they'll have the entire company get together for a short period of time and allow staff to connect, to chat, talk a little bit about work goals, but more importantly, to connect socially. Something we do, for example, internally at Bucket List Rewards is we take our entire company for 10 minutes every day as we do small breakout groups. Every week, the group changes up. So you get to interact with a group of 5 to 7 different people every single week. And then the entire company regroups in a large video chat, and we ask some social/fun team building type of questions. And it's cool. Like some of the takeaways I've heard, one of our lead developers, Mark Olivier Gosselin, I happen to know he's on a 150-day streak with Duolingo. He's learning how to speak Spanish, which is just awesome.
Wow.
Another fellow named Irfan, he's also from the development team. He's one of our software engineers. He's been given a bunch of money to build a help fund a private post-secondary institution. Anyways, so you get to learn about people's interests, their passion, how they're making a difference in the world, and how they're showing up. And so I think these micro moments are a super powerful tool that everybody here could consider leveraging.
Yeah, that's such a great tool. Thanks for sharing that, Jason. And it lines up, and I'd love to hear Jerry and Chrissy's perspective on this as well. It lines up with a question in the chat. The question specifically is, how do we develop our culture when we now lack a shared experience? And I think maybe the context of that is we're all remote or some form of remote and seem to be feeling a little more divided. How do you create that feeling of belonging and a strong culture in that environment?
Yeah. Christy, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we do still have shared experiences, don't we? They're just different.
Of course we do, but they are different, and I think the pandemic kind of thrust that upon us, and we had no choice but to be different. O2E, we've won Great Places to Work, most loved workplaces, most admired cultures. We had this really vibrant culture, but the pandemic shed a light on the fact that that culture was very much focused on our in-office culture. And so we had people that came to our offices every month, and they would tour our offices and see what the culture was that we had. Our cultural artifacts were about bringing our people together. And so suddenly we were forced to pivot. All of our people were at home. We couldn't have first round Fridays. We couldn't have an in-person huddle every day. And so we had to completely pivot the way that we did things. But I think that our communities were maintained. And I think community is really the most important part about this. Culture is about the collective. It's about shared thoughts and feelings and behaviors. And so how do we make sure that that is maintained in a hybrid or remote workplace when you don't have fun walls or fun parties together? How do you maintain those communities? And so that's the work that we're really doing right now. And I think when you have a hiring strategy that focuses on shared thoughts and behaviors, when you have really strong vision, mission, and values that really helps you create a lens that you bring people in, that's how you maintain your communities. And I think I'm going to kick this to Jerry, but I think he's gonna probably agree with that, being the king of community.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. We yes, we're cut from the same cloth, right?
Yes,
Yeah, and I the only thing I'd add, I love everything you said, is it's the harder thing is about how much more intentional we have to be about creating our cultures in the new reality. And and what I mean by that is, the office experience that Christy described had a lot of accidental connection points. And I used to call, happy accidents or whatever. You bump into someone in the hall, and there's an impromptu birthday celebration at someone's desk. It's more difficult to have those. And so I think, and I know you did this work, Christy, at O2E, but you really have to think about those connection points, and you have to design them. You have to design the connection points in your organization. How do we bring people together? When? For what purpose? Both online and in person. And certainly I know a lot of remote companies that sort of swore that they'd go all remote during the pandemic, that are now kind of saying, well, we're going to be almost all remote. But there's some moments where we still feel the need to have that gravity to bring people together for an event or something. And so, yeah, connection points. That's the point I'll leave with.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Christy and Jerry. Some fantastic points. And based on the questions that we're getting in the chat, we're getting a lot of how-to questions. So I think let's move forward from the trends section, because we've gotten pretty good in that so far. And let's jump into the getting culture at the core of your strategy. So I think good strategy tackles a meaningful problem, and I think culture strategy is the same. It tackles a meaningful problem in your people and culture environment. So let's throw this first question to you, Christy. If it's not already, how do you get culture on the strategy table in your organization?
Yeah, Jerry used a word that I think we've been using a lot lately, and it's you have to be intentional. And so I think the data exists, and Jason's going to speak to this because his data is just so good. But having culture at the center of strategy needs to be intentional in everything that you do. And so for me, when I think about how you get it at the table, you point out the pain points. And what are all of our pain points right now? We're having a problem attracting people. We're having a problem retaining people. We're having a problem making sure that our people have an employee experience in a remote or a hybrid workforce. And so what's at the core of all of that is ensuring that you have an incredible culture. So Jerry made a point earlier where you're talking to your leaders in business language. When they're talking about customer attraction, you're talking about employee retention, employee engagement, productivity. Like those are the things that your leaders are really deeply feeling the pain of right now. And the answer to all of those problems is culture. And so my answer to this question is propose yourself as the solution. Culture is the solution to those business problems. Building a great culture, maintaining great culture within your business is the solution to their biggest business problems that keep them up at night.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel like you're probably a pretty good salesperson, Christy. Find the pain, solve the pain. It's good.
Find the pain, solve the pain.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Jason, this next question's for you. Culture is on the strategy table. You have, executive buy-in, and you've kind of started to tackle some of these problems. You've created some fantastic core values. The organization really believes in them, and the vision and mission are written down. But right now, they're on a piece of paper in your drawer. What do you do? How do you bring that stuff to life?
Oh, excellent question. I think mission, vision, values are kind of a central building block that culture stacks on top of. And just to reiterate what you just said, Reese, you do want to make sure they're in fact written down. that they're well communicated to the team. There should be really strong awareness with the current team, and that they should be woven into the recruitment strategy as well. And for example, I love referencing other organizations, like if you look at what Netflix has done, like their core values are woven into the entire employee life cycle. So they hire based upon core values. They'll have interview and screening questions in and around core values, like people living these or not. When people are onboarded in the organization, they're compensated and bonused based upon values. It's literally woven into the whole process, which I think is that becomes a very powerful way to bring them alive. And then additionally, if you recognize staff for living values, that's very powerful. And one of the, I think, best ways to really bring values alive is through leadership storytelling. So, for example, I have up on screen here a quote from Frank Blake, the chairman CEO over at Home Depot. And what he said is, when you recognize people for extraordinary work, the person you recognize, they're excited, they're thrilled, and everybody else is thinking, I want a story told about me too. And storytelling is an incredibly compelling way to bring myths and legends alive inside of an organization and values alive. And for example, I'm sure we can all think of a time, maybe you're sitting around a campfire and somebody tells a really great story. Stories stick with us for a long period of time. For example, storytelling is 22 times more memorable than just sharing facts. So you have a good leader sharing a great story about an employee that creates a hero myths inside of your organizations. And all the best organizations do this, whether it's a Netflix or Google or Disney. There's no cost associated with doing this. This is just what good leadership is all about. Mm-hmm. And lastly, it's a really simple way for often leaders it's a very simple way for leaders to communicate to the entire team as well, because you just tell a great, compelling story. Yeah. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on how to bring core values alive.
I love this point, Jason. The science lines up behind it, but even just, you think I'm hanging out with my friends, like you said, at the campfire, you're not telling them about the other day when you were driving down the road at 65 kilometers an hour and the wind pressure was 73 and you're not telling them the stats and the details. That's not how you share your life experience with one another. You do it by telling stories. And why do we do that differently in business? It's such a great point. So Jerry, moving across to you, a couple of really good points from Christy and Jason. And I want to ask you, how do we do this? Jason has touched on storytelling, but what's some of the other elements that need to be thought about when you're crafting this culture strategy?
Yeah, thanks, Reese. And yeah, I think, it's both sad, but it's a reality. I know for some of the people on the call is, we still are at the point of kind of teaching some people that culture is not ping pong, or culture is not, in the remote world, virtual beer Fridays, where, wow, I can't believe we got into that for a while at the beginning of the pandemic, where it'll be fun to sit around and alone in my office and share a beer with a bunch of tiles on a screen. And I'm not taking anything away from that. It can be really fun, but that's a part of culture, but that's not culture. So I think, thanks for asking this, Reese, because there's the way to do this to really make culture strategic is to show the depth that's involved in culture. And I know, so we've created a tool called our culture design canvas. We're not the only, there's lots of these out there. Christy, I know you came up with a similar tool at O2E to kind of help you design your hybrid workplace. So what our culture design canvas tries to do is again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but really intentional about defining what it is, but also aspiring to what it could be. And so our canvas starts with the core, which is the stuff that we've been talking about, like, why we exist, which is vision and purpose, and what we believe, which is at the core, which is core values, guiding principles, like what makes us special here, because we all want to believe that we work at a place that is really special and we're doing something different or in a different way. So that's at the core. And then the other part at the core is what we call sort of are how we do things here. And those are like the norms, the standards, the way we do things that's a little bit different at our organization. And so we take that and we say, you know, if you're designing a culture strategy, you got to get really clear on all that. And a lot of times that's where people stop. They go, okay, we got our core values on the wall, we got our mission over here and our vision, and we kind of have some of the standards, the core competencies and things like that. But then we surround our canvas with three more things, and it's artifacts. So what are those? And Tracy, Christy, you already mentioned artifacts, but what are those sort of rituals, traditions? It could even be like physical objects or swag, that coveted mug, you know, the jacket, the whatever it is. But what are those things that support the things that are in the core? Because if it's in the core and it's just stuff that's written down, you've gone part of the way, but you haven't gone all the way. Like, do we have artifacts that support this? Rituals, traditions, events, celebrations? Do we have stories, to Jason's storytelling, stories that support that this core value is really core to us, that we choose this over that? You know, we err on the side of employee wellness over profit, or, you know, whatever that is. So what are the stories that we tell? And then finally, the other support over in the right there is shared language. What's the way that we talk about ourselves and our customers and our partners, and everything from like the quirky titles that we might have to virtual meeting room names or physical meeting room names, or you know, just the way we talk, and we like to call them our uniques. So we feel like this all in is a really, really intentional way to not just define the culture that you have today, but to find the gaps and be really intentional about the culture you want to design that's going to support the business for tomorrow.
Thanks for sharing that, Jay. And there's a couple of great questions in the chat. One around compensation, which I'll get to, but one that's directly related to what you're talking about there. Do you have any advice for how to preserve the best elements of what has been a very positive culture in a rapidly scaling team? So yeah, how do you what's good? And
yeah, I mean, I think the more that you sort of identify the things that are good, and identify means more than just like top down identify, but it's also got to be a little bit of a bottom up identify. I think that's the first task is to name those things and identify them. And then when I'm working with an organization, I'm like, if that thing's really important, how does it show up in our organization? How do leaders, how do managers, how does it show up sort of in the day-to-day interactions? Because to me, that's culture. Culture happens every day in the interactions that we have with each other, with our leaders, the way we hear messages from the very top of the organization, the way we treat each other. So I think, you know, you go, those things are important. We want to preserve those. How do we make sure that they show up time and time again, day after day in our organization? And I'll throw it to Christy or Jason to add on to any of that, or make me sound like I know what I'm talking about.
No, I fully agree with you, Jerry. And I think I have a really good example from our business. We had a daily stand-up huddle. And so every day we would come together literally in the same room. The thought of that right now, that we all used to squish into the same room and look at our
unmasked.
Unmasked, absolutely. Like, I couldn't get any squishier up next to the person next to me. And so we look at our numbers and how our business was doing as a whole that day, that week, that month. And so suddenly, as we had to pivot that, we looked at what was the value of that? Why did that resonate with our people? Why was that valuable to our business? So now we're doing it remotely. And I have to say, we're never going to go back to jamming people into a huddle room together, because it's so much better remotely, because the goal of it was transparency. The goal of it was celebrating each other. And I'm 5'2", so like standing in the middle of a room looking at the back of people's backs or in somebody's armpit, like maybe I wouldn't be the person that like, hey guys, I have a question, or I want to celebrate my team member. But on a chat, people are just engaged. People that I know to be some of the most introverted people within our organization are celebrating their team members, they're giving kudos, they're excited about how we're doing as a business and our profitability. And so really looking at what the value of that thing, what it was when it was in person, and evolving it and maintaining that value and amplifying it remotely, I think has really worked.
That's awesome. I love that, Christy, because I loved Huddle back in the day, but
Yeah,
I
I
love
loved
how you can
Huddle,
see
but
people's faces now.
it's so much better, and not being in someone's armpit, frankly, Jared, like it's pretty great
Sounds like a
too.
real plus.
That's such a bonus.
Yeah, that's great. One last question. I'm just scrolling back through to try to find the exact words, but something along the lines of, if culture is one in how to win in the Great Migration, is compensation 1A? Discuss.
So that came from Warren Chu, Reese, and I saw that come through. And hi, Warren, one of my favorite people. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna take this one.
Go for it.
Like hard no, compensation is not 1A. I'm sorry, but it's not. Like, yes, absolutely. Money is so much more than just dollars in your jeans. It is your mortgage, it's your kids' hockey camp, it's your recognition of value within an organization. Money is important. But I actually think the pandemic has taught us that you can no longer offer an exchange of goods and services. It's no longer hire a person to do X for you and pay them Y. That's not what's valuable anymore. People want to be recognized as their whole person. They want to join a community. I know I keep using that word over and over again, but they want to understand how you're going to develop them, who they're going to work with, how you're going to recognize their whole person, how you're going to recognize their life goals. We have an amazing 101 life goals program that we work with Jason on Bucket List with. And like, they don't, money is not 1A. It's like 15. It's still important. It's still on the docket, but it's not the biggest detractor of your talent. I promise you.
Thank you.
Disagree?
Obviously a well thought out perspective, Christy. That's great. Yeah.
I think that was a phenomenal answer. I'd add two tiny points more from my own experience. I think on top of everything Christy just said, I think people really care about like joining a company with a really compelling mission that ideally does good in the world, or shows that the company shows up and has a positive net impact. And also, I think related to something Christy said is like, what are the teams? How is this going to help me in my career development? I think if there is a growth story, and not all companies have it, but if there's a growth story, like where you are today and where the company's heading and how people can play a role in that journey, that really matters too, because people love to contribute, and they love to contribute when there's a bigger, greater outcome as well. So just two small kind of nuances I might add on to Christy's response.
Yeah. And I think we'd all acknowledge that there's an arms race going on, and we're all going to lose people. We have clients that are losing people that, you know, that they say they're leaving because of the money that's being offered at another. But we also know that those same clients that hopefully they're working with us because they get it, they get that culture is at the core, but they're attracting people. They're losing people for money, but they're attracting people without having to pay the amount that person left to go get. And they're attracting people for all the reasons that Christy and Jason just mentioned. So
yeah, there's some great support for this perspective in the chat as well. And if I can be so bold as the moderator to have an opinion here, I think people they have a set of higher order needs, and they've been progressively more and more looking towards their workplace to fill, and they need to feel significant, they need to feel belonging, and a few others depending on the model that you subscribe to. And when those things are out of whack, often they'll come and ask for more money, but what they're asking for more money is to fill another gap. They're going, I don't feel valued, I don't feel like I belong, I don't feel like I'm significant. And so I'm asking you to make me feel those things by paying me more money, but there's some other stuff to fix there. So I think it's a complicated but great topic. So let's keep moving forward. We have tons left on the agenda here, and I really want to get into the execution stuff, because all of this theory and strategy at its core is theory. How are we going to compete? How are we going to solve a problem is fantastic. But then what do we do with it? We've got some solutions and we're ready to go do some stuff. But how do we actually go and take that action? So I'm going to throw to you, Jason, first. As a serial entrepreneur, you have a lot of experience taking vision and strategy and turning it into meaningful action that produces results. Can you tell us a little bit about how you think about that process?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Reese. So I'm a very process, systems, and structures oriented individual. And we have if you go to the next slide there, we have kind of an overview of from strategy to execution. And in my experience, I think it's really important. I mentioned vision a few times, but the older I get and the more times I've had a chance to build companies, the more I realize this is so important. So starting with a super compelling vision that excites people, that you and the leadership team are excited about, like that gives people goosebumps, like that really matters, and it really works. Because if you and the leadership team are excited about it, it's catchy, that enthusiasm, that optimism, it spreads like wildfire amongst the team. And assuming you have that as a good foundation to build off of, from there, it's a little more tactical. You can create a great 3-year vision, which just breaks down the longer term vision into smaller chunks, from 3-year to 1 year, and from 1 year to quarterly rocks. And at the kind of quarterly rocks, you can use OKRs, you can use goals, quarterly rocks, whatever they may or may not be. And then to really bring it alive, I encourage, from my experience, again, making this as transparent as possible, so everybody has access to what is the vision, what are the details of it. Things are communicated on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or monthly. And then the best leaders, like the really amazing leaders and best cultures, is how can you meaningfully connect individuals to that bigger vision? How do people contribute to the benefit and well-being of the organization? And what's really cool to kind of link the storytelling piece together is a lot of times success often can be attributed to individuals and teams, and just to attach that success story to the bigger vision. I want to go one layer deeper into the vision piece, because it's something I've come to care so much about it. So I heard this quote. This quote's hundreds of years old, but I actually heard from a fellow named Reid Hoffman. He's the founder of LinkedIn. And what he said is, if you want to sail around the world, don't divide your people up into teams to send them into the forest to cut wood and to build boats. Instead, teach them to long for the vast and endless sea. And this connects to the mission and vision piece. If you create a compelling vision, people will figure out the details. They'll be motivated and excited about the journey that they're about to join you on. Something we do, and to take this vision and make it very tactical, is we've woven our vision into the entire kind of employee life cycle. So as a part of our standard recruitment process, typically around the second interview, we send our company vision to everybody. And we ask them to read the vision and to be prepared on the next interview to ask questions around it. So from even prior to the joining the organization, people are able to see whether it's a fit for them, and vice versa, whether our vision is exciting for them. So from day one, you're creating alignment and excitement around the long-term journey of the organization. And then one final comment on this. My favorite and / most interesting feedback I get is so many people and so many candidates we interview, they'll say things like, my last company had no vision, or if they had a vision, I had no idea what it was. I worked there for 3 to 5 years. And so there's a huge missed opportunity, I believe, in not sharing a vision and in not making it exciting. So those are just kind of my 2 cents around from strategy to execution.
Thanks, Jason. Some great points there, particularly around vision. I think we all need a struggle that's worth struggling for, and the vision gives that. Not every day is great at work, but those tough days, you need something bigger to hang on to. I'm going to throw to you, Christy, in a second here, just for some details on how you do it at O2E, executing your culture strategy. But I just want to recognize there's a couple of comments in the chat around, still on the compensation topic, that sometimes people have they've got kids and mortgage and responsibilities that sometimes it really is about the money. And that is absolutely true. Sometimes it really is about the money. But I think our job is to figure out when it's about the money and when it's about something else. And there's also, the business constraints of what can the business afford for this role and all that sort of stuff. So there's not a hard and fast, this is the only way to do it. I did just want to recognize that there are, our people have realities of obligations. So Christy, let's throw to you and talk a little bit about how at O2E you think about translating that vision for culture into a reality.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry, you guys saw me go on mute because my dog was drinking loudly. So this is the joy of working from home, right? We've all got dogs and kids and all the fun things. And just to pivot on the compensation piece, please know that I believe in fair compensation. Like this is not in lieu of, for sure. It definitely has a seat at the table. So want to make sure I'm clear about that because I know it's a topic I get passionate about. But in terms of that strategy execution piece, this can't all be airy-fairy stuff, right? You need to, I'm gonna lean in with Jason. Our philosophies on this front are very similar. At O2E, we talk a lot about the painted picture. And so painted picture is really our vision for the future and what that looks like. And we talk about that in the present sense, as if we have already achieved our ideal future. And then we look at our current state and we think about what are the gaps? What do we need to do to get to that ideal future state? And we use language that we call bets. And I love that word. What are you going to bet on as a business? What are you going to put all of your resources and your passion into in order to get from your current state into your future painted picture? And so for me, I would say make sure that culture is a bet at your business. We're calling it Future of Work at O2E Brands. And it is our big bet for 2022. How are we going to make sure that we maintain, that we amplify our culture in order to attract and have an amazing employee experience, in order to have a team that is productive, in order to have a team that is efficient, in order to have a team that believes in our vision, our purpose? That is our big bet for 2022. And so you need to make sure that your bet is resourced, that you have the financial ability to be able to really make that come alive. And so for me, getting strategy at the table is making sure that people understand how culture moves the business forward and making it a bet that is resourced and it has the people and the financial backing that it needs in order to make it come alive.
Yep.
And
mic drop.
Yay, Christy.
Thanks, Christy. Great answer. Jerry, I'm going to throw to you to get really tactical in a second, just about what can the P&C function specifically do to support the rollout of culture. But before we do, there's a great question in the chat that says, what are your perspectives on the construct that culture is emergent and therefore it can't be built? Dave Snowden's work. Now, I can, or Christy looks like she wants to take it as well. I'm not specifically familiar with Dave Snowden's work, but I think it's a bit of both. And I'll throw it out to the panel and see what they think.
No, Jerry, go for this. I just thought that was such a great question, whoever asked that question.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were like dying to jump in there. So
I just loved it. I agree with that person. I just like, and Jerry, I feel like this is you to the core.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's, I mean, I don't know what more to say. It is a bit of both, but it is, you can be very intentional. This isn't like, you have to be as an organization. We spend a lot of time thinking about what kind of culture, like when an organization starts, the culture is kind of an extension of the founder. So, Jason, many of the organizations that you started were kind of a reflection of who you were as a person. But over time, as the organization scales, that might still be at the core, but we add a whole bunch of people into that mix. And if we just let it happen by accident, if it just evolves, who knows where it's going to go, and I think it's, it almost, I'll be passionate about this, but it's almost irresponsible as leaders to just let it happen. Now, I think we have to involve everyone in it, but I think we design and we get intentional about the culture that we need to have. And there is an organic aspect to that, but it really, at the core of it, I think we have to be intentional and say, this is the kind of culture we need to win, to win our industry, or to do the thing that we want to do, to achieve our purpose, all of those things. So I'll step down off my soapbox, but that's what I do.
In terms of sharing opinions and experiences, I'd second what you just said, Jerry. I'm not familiar with Dave Snowden's work, but I love the idea of building a winning culture, because winning or losing can be measured. And historically, there's certain leaders who are very good at building winning cultures, which is a deliberate extension of somebody trying to achieve something via culture. And also, you look at the deliberate nature of culture in different organizations, a military, for example, is a very deliberate and different culture than, say, a nonprofit. So I think I think great organizations will have a deliberate construction of their culture, and they'll start from day one. And I think there's probably a bunch of elements that kind of cool byproducts that spin out of this deliberate nature, meaning that you can't have complete and autocratic control over your culture. And in fact, that's probably a horrible way to build it as well. Just one person, a command and control type of structure saying this is the culture. But in summary, I think you can be insanely deliberate about building a great organization.
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. And I think to our earlier point about having a really strong vision, mission, purpose, that starts with hiring, right? You're bringing people into your organization that believe in that are bought into what you're trying to achieve. And to Jason's point about sharing those values and that painted picture going forward at the very beginning, culture is the collective. It's a living, breathing thing, but the people that you brought in are aligned to your company vision. They're aligned to where you want to go. And so you're all rowing the boat in the same direction. So it is very intentional, but it is carried by the cultural water carriers of your people.
Yeah, agree. There's a little bit of chatter in the chat around culture add, culture fit. How do you keep from limiting different views from coming into the company and still maintain the culture, so to speak? A very complex topic.
I love that new language of culture add. I mean, culture fit was something I talked about all the time, and I now talk about culture add. It's not about cookie cutters, is it? It's about the strengthening the fabric with diversity, and it starts with diversity of ideas and opinions and things like that.
And I think in part it's about knowing what your culture needs. Does it need to be challenged and shifted right now? Does it, what do we need in terms of these culture adds and being intentional about them? So anyway, there's lots of great questions in there. We won't have time to go too much deeper on that topic, unfortunately. But Jerry, let's go to the tactical, and I'll pull up the slide.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll try to be quick because we're going to run out of time. But so thinking about taking culture from strategy to execution, a lot of times what we've found with organizations that we work with, and I found this even when I sat in Christie's chair, is culture can kind of feel abstract and, a little bit conceptual. And so how do you take it from that and turn it into things that we see in a strategic plan, which are this program with this budget, and these people are working on it, and it'll be delivered in this quarter. And so the way that we've approached that is we've created this culture in 12, which is basically just, it says, look, to execute really well on culture, and there can be debate over, is this the right 12? Is there maybe 13, or is there only 11 or whatever? But we've landed on these are 12 capabilities. These are 12 sort of programs, systems that an organization needs to execute on in order to have a really, really healthy and high performing culture. So there's 12 things there, but there are things like, total rewards. We talked about compensation. We say like how you articulate and your capability around total rewards is a really practical way of how you execute on culture. So is communications, how you, not just like, the emails that go out, but how you communicate with your team. Talent acquisition, I will not try to steal anything from the expert, Christy, but I mean, how we go out, how the EVP that we put out to the world, our employee value proposition, and the way that we as an organization have a capability around attracting people to our organization. These are all things that what we do when we work with organizations is say, okay, you can't be good at all of these. It'd be great to be, 10 out of 10 on all of these, but which ones are the ones that will get us closer to the business strategy that we're trying to execute on, that we're to our goals as a business? And you'll find that there's almost always the top three. And we take those and we turn them into who will do what by when, how much is it going to cost, what's the program we need to develop, how do we need to get better at this, and so on. So that's one way that you help a people and culture team go from culture's really important to culture's really important, and this is the thing that we have to do, and this is how we're going to go about and do it.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate you getting tactical with us for a second there. So we've got 5 minutes left, and that is the agenda for today. Really appreciate your time. We're going to do a quick wrap here. We've got your HRCI credits at the end, but we got a couple offers, to finish it up here. So Jason, I'll throw to you. I know you've got your bucket list offer, and then we're going to open up a poll to see if anybody wants to take us up on these. So bucket list, and then Trailblaze will come next.
Yeah, if just sidebar, if you're interested in learning more about bucket list rewards, we provide an enterprise rewards and recognition program. We work with many tens of thousands of people in over 40 different countries with all sorts of cool organizations, everything from RBC Bank to NBA teams like Orlando Magic. And we help with bringing peer recognition programs alive, years of service, performance awards, all that good stuff. If you're interested in learning more, just click yes. I'm going to throw a quick poll up on screen here. Would you like to learn more about bucket list rewards? So if so, just give that a click, and we'll be happy to share a bit more information with you. And I'll let that run for just a few more seconds.
And then while everybody's signing up there. Yeah, thanks, Jason. Really appreciate that, mate. And for our offer today, book some time with Jerry to review your 2022 plan. We support organizations in planning their people and culture strategy and then executing against that with consulting and training services. And if you would like a second perspective or just to bounce some ideas, please feel free to take us up on this session. So just hit that yes button to grab some time with Jerry.
I feel like we're auctioning off Jerry. It's so exciting. Win a date with Jerry.
Is that the best picture you could find, Reese?
I like that picture. You look good.
Well, what I would say too, I've had a ton of interactions with Jerry over the years. He is an incredibly insightful, awesome dude who just like every time we chat, you make me laugh and I learn 2 to 3 things so that I can implement into the organization. So I'd highly encourage everybody to chat with Jerry.
Thanks, Jason. And Warren, thank you from the chat.